statement that an in-person meeting is not practical or prudent due to the COVID-19 emergency. Due to the COVID-19 emergency, this meeting will be held primarily pursuant to Section 7E of the Open Meetings Act. Members of the public can participate via Zoom, whether at a computer or by phone. Additionally, as required by law, at least one representative from the village will be present at the Village Hall boardroom, and the virtual meeting will be simulcast for members of the public who do not wish to view the virtual meeting from another location. So with that, can I get a call to order and roll call?
Sure. Member Barrett?
Here.
Member Cole is absent. Member Hance?
Here.
Member Richards absent. Member Twitchell?
Present.
Co-chair Puryear?
Present.
And co-chair Renner.
Present.
Okay, you have a quorum.
Okay. Next up, we have the consideration of the January 18th, 2022 regular meeting minutes and the January 31st, 2022 special meeting minutes. Are there any comments, revisions, suggestions to those meeting minutes? Hearing none, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second? Can I get a second?
Second.
Okay. Roll call, please.
Sure. Member Barrett?
Yes.
Member Hance?
Yes.
Member Twitchell?
Yes.
Co-chair Puryear?
Yes.
And co-chair Renner.
Yes. Okay, at this point, we have non-agenda items. We open to the public for 15 minutes for anyone to speak not on the agenda. I don't see anyone from the public online, or are there anyone? Okay.
No.
Okay, Samantha, you want to take us into the general business then?
Sure. So the first item is the mosquito RFP that the village is releasing. So the village of Lake Bluff, the Lake Bluff Mosquito Abatement District is an independent unit of government that provides mosquito control services to residents in Lake Bluff, Green Oaks, North Chicago, and unincorporated communities of Knollwood and Abbott Park. Since 2018, Lake County has been working to dissolve this district, and because of that, the village will release an RFP to interested contractors for mosquito abatement services to manage monitoring, larval control, and adulticide for the village's corporate limits. In this RFP attached in your packet, we are interested in first-rate turnkey mosquito control programs to promote the public health and safety for residents, and we have listed 3 goals for our contractor to follow. The first being provide high-quality services in an efficient and cost-effective manner for the village residents. Secondly, provide excellent customer service as the first point of contact for village residents concerning the services. And third, emphasize environmental stewardship in the provision of the services, including through contractors' preferences for an implementation of organic pesticides, techniques that minimize pesticides application and volume, and the use of electric and non-motorized vehicles. And the village board had the chance to look at this RFP last night, and we are just looking for your comments or concerns on the RFP in your packet. So if you have any comments, please feel free to share, and I can do my best to answer them.
I guess I have a question. Could somebody shed some light on why the mosquito abatement district is being disbanded, or they want to disband it, and why do we have to have it at all? Why do we have to have mosquito, larvicide, insecticide, whatever it is, organic or not? I mean, I've seen the guys chucking things into the storm sewers. I just can't imagine that's a good idea for our water source, but so that's 2 questions, I guess.
Sure, I can answer the first question. I just know that without this service, there won't be any mosquito abatement control services at all. Drew, would you be able to answer why?
Why is the district disbanding?
Right.
Yeah, it is a general idea that special purpose districts, the idea if the fewer governmental entities in the universe, the better. That's the general idea. So special purpose districts, it can be eliminated and have those services provided by others, either existing districts or corporate entities like the village, or at a higher, greater regional level, whether it be the county or the state. I think that's just a general push. If you can do it and find better ways to do it, then I think that's the general goal. And the county has looked at dissolving other special districts, but this was one that was, there's only 2 mosquito abatement districts in all of Lake County. There's a South Lake one, and there's a Lake Bluff mosquito abatement district. And this was the very smallest by far. So it was just something that, hey, this seemed like food for, ample opportunity for the county to get rid of a special district and let those entities decide how they wish to provide services or not. And so to answer the other question was, I think this is a situation where there is going to be some resident expectation of services to be provided, and that the village is coming up on this establishing a program that could closely follow that which the Lake Bluff Mosquito Abatement District, where they left off. And they have been ratcheting down services, right? They've kind of been stepping away from the full course of treatments and to include, so there's the monitoring aspects, there's the larvicide treatments, which are very cost efficient. And then there's the adult side, which is, the spraying and so forth. And that's the ones they've been trying to, pinch off and try not to do those with the same level as they have historically. So again, we're picking up where they left off. The village board has been talking about this and wanted to bid it to get the full complement of services, then ultimately decide what is that full scope they're actually going to engage a firm to run for us. And then again, looking to you all to say, if you have any thoughts on this, please give it to them as we get ready to go out the door with this. And there's a very tight timeline to get to market with this. So I think this is, I think we wanted to give you guys 10 minutes or so to really talk about it. Look, I think some of you are familiar with it. I know Marietta's spouse has served on that board, and others may have specific knowledge in this regard, but looking for your feedback.
Just to follow up on the economic part of the government side before we get into any sustainable questions, Drew, I understand the desire to get rid of another governmental agency,
yeah,
but there's no idea of just bidding with other towns on a common contractor or services to get best price rather than just local communities, each one bidding the service from a contractor?
Yeah, so actually, when the county talked about getting rid of the service, I talked to the county about taking it over, right? There's economies of scales to be had, right? So the idea that it'd be one level of service to have, I mean, they're already doing monitoring, and that is, there's been shared monitoring services within the county for a number of years. But in terms of when you start getting to larvicide and adulticide treatments, it's a total patchwork quilt of who does what and to what degree. Certainly in Lake County, Lake Forest is a great amount of private property owners who carry that burden, and the city has a larvicide program, but they really don't get into adulticide to any great degree, but some communities do. And I mean, so like Highland Park, Bannockburn, Deerfield are all part of that South Lake district. But yes, when I had conversations with one of the, if not the primary provider of these services, and I was trying to make a pitch to the county, the break point is you need about 50% of the county to start experiencing economies of scale. And the county did not want to get into to take on a new service, right? They like the idea of dissolving the service or the special district, but when things can be done better regionally, more economically, more efficiently, there wasn't a lot of support for that to happen there, unfortunately. So we are left to pick it up, and I think this will evolve over time. But again, this is a 3-year contract with some renewals in there, and so I think the village will learn, and then its service levels will evolve based off that experience.
Okay, so I'll leave it to open it up to some of maybe the more sustainable questions.
Yes.
Well, I feel I can speak to this because a long time ago, I was on the Mosquito Abatement District Board and my husband Chip took over as treasurer. So I have a lot of very, very good information that he's tracked and information that I learned through the process. And I've got a beautiful spreadsheet here with a lot of detail in it. But what we know is that his numbers go back to 2008. And at that time, the village was spending, you know, $77,000, $89,000 for mosquito abatement. And as Drew said, it was ratcheted down. So the number of services were ratcheted down, the costs were ratcheted down. And I think that's a great thing. I mean, we learned that the helicopter spraying is a lot of money and is totally useless, just to be frank. The adulticiding, again, terrible impact on the entire environment and very little to do with actually tamping down mosquito populations. So I know there's a lot of passionate feelings about adulticiding, and we need to get into that. But my question for you, as pertains to the documentation we were sent, I see that in 2020, a lot of services were not performed, but in the 2022 proposal, they're back up again. So I wanted to know how those services were put back into a proposal when they had been removed before. You know, I'm speaking specifically of a helicopter treatment, both types, the truck harborage and the barrier treatments. Those are adulticides. So that's my question is, why were they added back into the proposal?
Sorry, Drew, would you be able to speak on this?
I was gonna give you a chance, Sam. So, I think, like I said earlier, the goal was to get a price for everything, kind of a la carte, and then they'll ultimately decide. So if there's input from the SEC, if you're gonna say, hey, village board, we recommend you not do these or not add these back in, right? I think that's what the board is looking for.
And is that something we're going to contribute tonight, or is that something that we have time to consider further?
You have time tonight.
Okay, but
Tonight.
I'm sorry, Drew, you're saying there's gonna be an a la carte proposal that would come back that would itemize all these items, then wouldn't there be a review to go, okay, I want this item, and not this item, or you want in advance of that proposal going to the village for us to have issued our preferences ahead of time?
Yeah, I think that's right, Brian. I think I don't think there's a lot of, and you guys can tell me if I'm wrong, I don't think there's a lot of debate about continuing monitoring, right? That's a public health issue. The village interacts with the county. I don't think there's any question that the village would continue to do that. And actually I've talked to the county about maybe that could just be a county-wide program and the village can just step out of that altogether, right? Because the village is within the county. Why do we need to spend dollars on that? And we've been having those conversations. So I think that'll continue to evolve. But at least now we need to secure a price for it in case that we don't reach some sort of resolution. The larvicide treatment, I think generally speaking, that even communities like, I think like Forest that doesn't have a really, I would say, a formal adulticide program publicly, they engage in larvicide because that is such a very cost-efficient method. Correct me if I'm wrong, Marietta, right?
No, that's right. That's right.
Yeah, very cost-efficient, highly effective, lesser impacts to the environment. It's usually just the adulticide where there's all the hand-wringing and disagreements on how far do we go or not go. So if maybe, yeah.
But
Please.
the larvicide goes into the storm sewers, right? Gets thrown in pucks by a guy on a bicycle that goes into our water that we then drink. So like, what's the difference? Might be more efficient on the mosquitoes, but it has a greater impact on my drinking water, the fish that I might eat. I mean, why?
I want to ask Drew a question because what this gets down to is residents' comfort level living with mosquitoes and their comfort level with applying mosquito repellent to their own bodies. And until that changes, there's always going to be an expectation that the government should take care of mosquito abatement. So there's a huge public education effort that needs to go into this in order for people to stop wanting this type of mosquito abatement. You know, I grew up, I've never even heard of mosquito spraying or abatement until I moved to Lake Bluff. I grew up putting deep woods off on me and taking care of my own self instead of trying to alter the environment to suit my desire because I want to sit on the patio in the evening and not have to spray myself. So the reason all this is done is because our residents want it. I'm not sure if they're really up to speed on the efficacy of this kind of stuff, of the health risks involved. So I'm not sure if that's answering your question, but that's why this is here. It's because residents want it. And until they learn that you can just spray yourself or take care of your own yard, then that's going to change. So there's a big public education thing that has to take place. And that leads to another question that I wanted to ask you, Drew. We know that over the years, the number of services and treatments have gone down, the costs have gone down. Is there any way that the village actually tracks resident feedback? Are you tracking the number of complaints about, I've got so many mosquitoes in my yard, or a mosquito just bit me, why haven't we sprayed? You know, is there any way for you to give us information about the kind of comments you hear from residents, and when do you actually trigger the go-ahead to adulticide? Because I see in the proposal that you've got 4 written in, but for years they've just done as needed. And I know there's a price difference there, but as needed seems to work well. So my question would be, how do you decide when to do it?
So I asked that very question of the former president of the Lake Bluff mosquito bed. Like, was there a rubric? Was there some objective measure that says after a certain count? And my understanding is that the contractor who worked for the LBMAD used to give you a recommendation, right?
Yes.
And would say,
Yes.
I think it's time to spray based off the counts, right? There was some objective data. And then I think my understanding is the district would pause and wait. And then there was no, I mean, if for those of you who don't know, the Lake Bluff Mosquito Abatement District was a taxing body with no staff.
Yes.
And so Lake Bluff Village Hall is the customer service desk for the Lake Bluff Mosquito District.
Yes.
And then we would get phone call after email saying, hey, what's going on? A mosquitoes carried off my child yesterday, or, you know, whatever it is. And then we would have to say, we would call up or email the president, whoever was there, and say, listen, we've gotten 27 calls today, or we've gotten 2 calls today, and we would be conduit for that. And no charge, unfortunately. Anyway, yeah, so to get to that point is I myself, I would like to have some sort of metrics to say if and when we do spray, there's some objective, clear, here's the data that we're going to use to drive that if and when we ever do it, and here's what does it, because it is a passionate issue for a lot of people, and we want to be able to communicate for this period of time, this is how we're going to handle it. So certainly there's communication involved with that, whether it be as set up in this RFP, is that we would expect that we pick up where we left off with regards to notification. Anybody who's a sensitive receptor and would want to know before spraying, we would communicate to them, hey, it's coming. Likewise, we would have a desk where people can call in and say, hey, I want to be put on that list. And then beyond that is a complaint line that we would get regular information back from the contractor, which my understanding, at least from today, was that there wasn't always timely communication of number of complaints and how they were resolved. So we're trying to manage that so that we could use that data to help find out how long does the village stay in this business, right? The idea, like, as your point, over time, and maybe through village surveys and other ways, we can say, hey, maybe we keep dialing this back till we're just totally out of the business, right? Because we're going to get seed money from the dissolution of the Lake Bluff Mosquito Abatement District, where we could have enough money to, you know, run this program for a few years and maybe to be done. Wouldn't that be lovely, right? So that, but in the meantime, I think the village wanted to be ready to have a soft transition. And then, because, you know, I would gather that the majority of Lake Bluff residents have no idea that the mosquito abatement district is going away.
That's correct. That's absolutely, I mean, I think majority of the public doesn't even know that on your property taxes, if you read the fine print, there's a little line item that says mosquito abatement. And it's a very small amount of money, but I think they had quite a little treasure trove. You know, at least when I was on the committee, there was a lot of money in that little mosquito abatement district. And the trouble we get into is that the vendor is our is our advisor. So there's a little bit of a conflict of interest because you're going to them as the experts saying, do you think we should spray? And they're saying, yes, you should. In fact, you should spray with a helicopter and we should bring trucks out and we should do this. And they'll show you a jar of mosquito larvae that look squirmy and scary. And everybody goes, oh my gosh, we better get those trucks pumping. You know, so the expert is the guy that says go and we pay him. So, but I have to say, you know, Clark is our provider. And if we have to have a provider, I wouldn't go with anyone else because I've studied them. Everybody on mosquito abatement has studied them. There are a lot of guys out there, you know, correct me if I'm wrong, Drew, but you don't have to be licensed to spray for mosquitoes.
Correct.
And so if we have to do it, we want to do it with, you know, I have no vested interest in promoting Clark, but they are the experts in the most environmentally friendly way to do this if we decide to do it. And I know we have to put an RFP out and maybe we'll get somebody else that wants to respond to that. But, you know, that's from my experience. If you have to do this, and I know you're going to look at money and everything else, you have to, I think they're the best bet, but they have to be managed. I mean, one of the problems for me was that the Clark rep was at our mosquito abatement district board meetings. And that always felt a little odd, but I could talk forever about mosquito abatement. But what we have to say to ourselves is, my belief is that there's a big public education thing that has to take place to change the culture in our area about how to live with mosquitoes and how to, and if we're eventually going to extinguish mosquito abatement services, then we have to beef up our public education so people know, you know, just like you put on sunscreen before you go out in the sun, you put on mosquitoes before you go out in the mosquito repellent before you go out in the woods, or, you know, I put my raincoat on before I go out in the rain. So we already have behaviors that we think nothing of when we have to go out into the environment and, you know, deal with the elements. So
I see member Twitchell has
Thank you.
her hand raised.
sorry, guys, I got to stop talking because I could go on forever.
Yeah, thank you. I am off camera because my internet is saying that it's unstable. So anyway, I apologize for that. But so a couple of things. I mean, one, I was really thrilled when I learned a few months ago that the mosquito abatement district was disappearing, and I knew they had been ramping back. And I believe that it was because we had understood that it's really not an effective approach. So I was a bit dismayed to see it in our packet, to be honest. I would love to see Lake Bluff have an integrated pest management approach to, just a robust, well-rounded approach that way. As I'm sure many of you know, one of the challenges with mosquito abatement is the profound impact it can have on non-target organisms. So that's things like honeybees and butterflies, all of which are crashing. I think people maybe are starting to get that message. Also, there's no official standard for organic, so there's no guarantee that something that is organic is actually more safe. And there's a frightening trend around insecticide resistance going on. They talked about that in Puerto Rico and other southern parts of the US around Zika. So I'd hate to have us contributing to that. I definitely echo Marietta in that if you were going to do anything, you need the best people, because they're you have to know that they really properly know how to use those chemicals. Instead, I had hoped we would be able to save taxpayer dollars reduce the toxic loads in our community. And Sam, I know you said this proposal was in order to protect public health and safety of the residents, but I think spraying chemicals is profoundly the wrong direction. That said, Drew, I totally agree monitoring is important. I would have loved to have seen a chunk of that 40,000 going instead to public education. So much can be done in our own backyards if people understand that they are cultivating mosquitoes by not changing their dog's water bowl or cleaning their bird feeders or whatever else may be the case. So, and if it's something, Drew, as you were saying, that it's sort of a ratchet down to nothing strategy, I'd be more supportive of that. Totally opposed to adultifying, supportive of monitoring. And then lastly, and maybe this is something that the committee looks at going forward, is I know individuals hire all kinds of services for their own backyards, which I think could be that's just dangerous for all of us. So I don't know if there's some kind of standards or a list of recommended vendors or something we can do to help manage that. So anyway, that's my thoughts for you.
Yeah. And let me be clear, the board has not said we want to ratchet this down to 0, but I think that is always, the idea of, does the village need to stay in any business? We're always looking at how we provide services and so forth. So if we can find that residents' expectations are that we get out of this business, well, great, we will. But I think if that's a comment, and I think maybe even hopefully the SEC would say, you all would say, listen, we would like the village to do this, but look to try to get out of this business by X date, and do that through education. And there is an item within the RFP that talks about, it puts a requirement on the service provider to provide public education materials and help in that effort. So that's in that RFP. So
Drew, I think one of the things is by putting it on the village and taking it out of this governmental agency, we do get our hands around it. And I think that's what I'm hearing, is that we're going to be able to control our destiny. I do want to make sure that Member Barrett has a chance to comment as well. I don't know if we've heard from you yet.
Yeah, I was looking for my thing on my screen for my hand up. I'm using a different computer today. I was wondering, are there any communities that we're aware of that have actually ever gone to 0 mosquito abatement? Marietta, would you know, or Marina, have we heard about communities that have done that successfully, or what process has gone through? Because I'm on board with you. I feel like knowing what we know about the impact of these insecticides, it just seems egregious that we would continue this ad nauseum forever. But it's always great to have somebody to copy. And I didn't know if we had any information like that.
We studied all kinds of communities in terms of trying to understand what we should do. And as Drew said, every community is different. Some communities don't do anything until they have a special event, and then they spray the whole town. I mean, it's really every individual. As far as anyone who doesn't do it, I don't have that information. I don't know.
I would say, unincorporated Lake County, which is a large swath of, we're around us, they don't have a program other than monitoring. The county is not providing services. There is no, I would say, nuisance management, or even, they don't do anything for when they detect West Nile or Zika or, that. But I know this, in terms of best practices, when we put together this RFP, Sam and Glenn and I, we looked at a variety of communities around the nation. We looked at Berkeley, California. We tried to think of who are very environmentally thoughtful communities that people think of in this nation. And so we went to those and looked. Berkeley has a drone to go do spraying. So they still spray, but they do it very, very targeted, targeted spraying. Anyway, but it is, they're doing the full gamut of monitoring, larvicide, adulticide. So it's as Marietta said, it's everybody's doing it differently. It's a patchwork quilt, and maybe to manage expectations, and if the goal is, it sounds like it is, the goal for the village should be to try to get out of the business, or stick to just a monitoring, or larvicide only. And maybe that's like, hey, let's try to get to that sooner rather than later. So, and I know you guys have a lot to talk about tonight, and it's already 7:30. So
Right, but I mean, I go
Yeah.
back to one thing. This is a little bit like seeing the plan for the village for downtown after it had already been approved. I think it's unfortunate that we didn't know about this before it went to the board. I'll start
Right.
with that as a big issue. I thought we learned our lesson on that. And I think the other, well, I mean, seriously, I think this is a perfect issue for the Sustainability Committee.
for the record, just so I'm crystal clear, it went to the board as an informational item. There was no vote. I just said, hey, guess what? This is going to the SEC. And we're talking to the Lake Bluff Mosquito. So it will go to the board when we get the results back, and then we'll have a conversation. So it really hasn't gone there yet, other than as an informational item.
And I am pretty sure that I did a little research on mosquito abatement long ago, like 2012, 2013, when they were talking about using marigolds, crushed marigold juice. I can't remember what the.
Chrysanthemums, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever that is. And if you look at the white papers on what that does to a 2-year-old when it's airborne, there would be no way this would pass in Lake Bluff if people knew what it could do to you or your children. And that's an organic.
Yes, I see. There's such a public education. What I learned, because I have no chemicals here at the house at all, nothing. And when I moved here in 2002, on a beautiful June night, a giant truck came all the way up my driveway and sprayed my whole house. And so that's when I got involved. And what people don't know is that the insecticide is indiscriminate. And the way that they measure the insecticide is that it kills anything that weighs as much as a grape seed or less. That's how it works. And when it's sprayed, it goes on every bird feeder, every swing set, every picnic table. I think if we did our job to educate the public, because, our vendor does have pamphlets, but I think the public education needs to come from an independent body. So we can teach people about that, so that people can make choices, because this is all driven by residents. The demand is there.
Sophie's got her hand up.
Yeah, so one thought, Drew, is that if the mosquito abatement district put itself out of business, that would suggest that it felt like its business were optional or not necessary. So I would say it could almost be unfortunate for Lake Bluff to then start mimicking what it did and then look to ratchet down. Because then there will be expectation. Like, it's a clean break. You can say it went out of business. It's not an effective strategy. I know I didn't have enough time to reach out to all the people I wanted to be more educated, but I spent many years collaborating with the Lake County Forest Preserve District as firm non-believers in mosquito abatement. But so anyway, I would say, if anything, I would go for monitoring. I get that you need to do the RFP, but I would be so disappointed to serve on the SEC and see us move into something that is beyond monitoring. But I do think it must be coupled with education, because I think you're probably right that people do expect to have mosquito treatment. So I think we have to explain why we wouldn't.
Yeah, if I was hearing the general consensus and very kind of trying to distill this down, that the village should make a plan to, within less than 5 years, move to monitoring only, if not putting that on the county altogether. And
2
then
years.
2 years.
2 years.
Well, okay. So, and then really that the consensus to have no adulticide, that's your recommendation to the board. And that, if I'm hearing you right, larvicide, yes, monitoring, yes. But again, get out of the business altogether within 5 years. 2, if you're marina.
No, I mean, I think 5 years is too far. I think this is the 21st century, and I would not be in favor of that. I would be in favor of being 2 years, and I would not be in favor of larvicide. I don't feel that that's even a necessary evil. But that's me. I mean, I don't
I'm
know.
with Marina on that one. If we get public education, the demand goes down. And so
Yeah,
that's where the money needs to go, is in educating the public and
Yeah,
explaining the hazards and the harm, and letting people know that it's for the good of the community, good for our health, good for the environment, and good for the future. And it is a sustainability. This is right in our wheelhouse. So, Drew, one more question. Can you explain the process to me again? When is you presented the RFP to the board and to us? Does the RFP go out now, and then we get the responses, and then we look at it again? I mean, I just want to make sure I understand that this is not the last time we get to voice our opinions about this and make a difference.
It is likely the last time you will get to see it due to the timing. Yes. Because it is, go ahead, Brian.
No, I think is, and I'm just expressing my opinions here. I think that, I'm with reducing or eliminating the adulticide, or going to some very targeted, limited, but not a broad spraying. I think that we, as if this goes to the village and we, the village board approves a bid with the SEC known preferences, that does not mean that we cannot begin to work on because we don't have time tonight to work together a comprehensive plan that we're going to do this, then this, and we're going to educate, and we're going to go to this point. And for the SEC simply to come up with that plan, and if we can get it done in 2 or 3 or 4 years, and then go back to the board and say, look, we've done these education, the public's behind it, it's, we have a contract, but that doesn't mean it's not going to change. It's one thing for a financial or a contractual agreement for 40,000. It's another thing for us to implement change at any point.
But it's a 3-year contract, correct?
Yes.
So why would we want to go out any further than that? We should we should get that plan in order as soon as possible for education over the next 3 years minimally, and 2 if we can get it done.
Well, I think there's education. I think there's more study. I mean, obviously, we've got members who've got a lot of experience in mosquito abatement. I would like to learn more. I would like to see what Highland Park's doing, Deerfield, some of the communities we know have been very progressive in some sustainable issues. I'd like to learn more about it. And also, I think that the education is going to take some time, not only the education, but for a whole of the residents, kind of an understanding, are they in for this? And the other thing that someone else mentioned is if we crash this too quickly, all of it, even the larvicide, we could have residents going, well, the heck with you, I'm going to spray my whole backyard. And there's this huge plume cloud that's drifting over to my neighbors. We haven't addressed that, which is a trickier issue, because now we're getting into private landowner use, which we've talked about, pesticides and insecticides, which is a whole nother complicated issue.
I really agree with what you're saying. I think there would be, as much as I can't wait to see the mosquito abatement ended, I think the shock and awe of the community finding out, surprised there's no more mosquito abatement without having put what you were talking about into place. I think the phone will ring off the hook, and and the village hall will probably be inundated with angry residents. So I think I think probably the gradual tamp down as quickly as we can possibly do it, Marina, because I definitely agree with what you're saying is how I would like to see us, sort of move in that direction.
Drew, I have one more question for you. Again, I'm looking at the proposal. The proposal has put back in the helicopter treatments after they have not been done. Is that what our intention is? Is to have that in a contract that we're going to add back helicopter spraying? Is that what that proposal is? Because it wasn't done.
Right. The goal is to get the number for bidding purposes, so the board can have the knowledge, and then they can again make a choice with the again, assuming that there's going to be a clear recommendation to ratchet the services down over a specific period of time through education and building the residents' knowledge that, hey, this agency has torn the Band-Aid off. They're out of this business now. So have a soft landing and have everybody prepared to transition to a different level of service. Right?
If I can sense the committee, Drew, myself included.
Yep.
If this is a service we have not been providing, it's one thing to take away something everyone's used to. It's another thing to add on something that we haven't been doing.
Right.
So
Right.
I'm suspecting that all of us would agree that our recommendation to transition down and education, all this, we probably would have a strong recommendation among the board not to do any helicopter spraying. Do I hear a general consensus?
Yeah, I mean, this looks like a contract.
Is a contract.
It looks like a contract, and the contract that's proposed is more expensive and has more services than we've had in the past. And so I guess I'm trying to say is, are we looking at what we are going to get? Are we going to get the helicopter treatments back again? Are we going to get 3 adulticides thrown into the contract instead of doing as needed? I mean, that's what I'm not clear if this is what we're saying yes to, or if they're going to come back with a bid and we're going to say, no, that's too much money. You're going to have to take helicopters off. We're going to go to as needed instead of 3 adulticides thrown in. Is that what you're saying? Because then we can come back and say, based on price and based on the need, this price can come down because we're going to eliminate these. So I guess I'm saying, are we going to negotiate, or is this a done deal?
It is likely this will be a negotiation. There's not that many vendors in the marketplace, as you know.
I know. I know where it's going, but what I'm saying is.
But just to be clear, Mary, as needed is different. Up to 3 is a cap, right? As needed could be 6, right? If the contractor says, hey, the numbers are high enough 6 times, we're looking at, potentially limiting it.
No, I mean, as needed, you have it's not a cap.
But I guess
you get 3 thrown
in.
You get 3 thrown in, and then you go as needed after that. So you get 3 thrown in as included in the contract, but then, so you're going to use those if you've already paid for them.
It is crystal clear. This body's recommendation is no adulticide, whether it be from a truck or from a helicopter.
Yes.
Okay, and I move that is exactly what is conveyed to the board and to the government in Lake Bluff.
Yes, I second.
That was already, I wrote that down 15 minutes ago and I said
okay.
it. So.
Can I add just one question to the experts? I get truck. I don't want things sprayed in the air. I obviously helicopter, no. When we say adulticide, what about, I'm just thinking of a targeted area, and maybe this is a stupid question. Someone with a hand sprayer on the village green before the bike thing, something that's local, targeted, and not in the air. Is that also part of these services, or is that not ever part of this? I mean, I get the truck and the helicopter.
Glenn, clarify me if I'm wrong. Your conversations with Clark, the idea of anything in adult treatments involves a vehicle?
Yeah, so there's, most of the treatments by volume deal with larvicide. there were treatments done in other parts of the mosquito abatement district that were different types of adult treatments. Those areas weren't inside the village, and those aren't proposed to come in, Brian. All that really happened for adults assigned treatments in the village was, again, trucks on all residential routes, as I understand it. And then separately, we've put in an option here to spray for special events, knowing that that might be part of the
But would the
strategy.
special event be just a spray up in the air from a big truck, or would it be local hand applied?
My understanding,
would-
it was usually by truck. They would do adulticide spraying by truck, like before the parade.
Short route.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is that accurate, Marietta?
I'm sorry, say that again. I was looking at the chart again. I'm sorry.
That, like the mosquito abatement district would have special event spraying, like before the parade, they would do by truck, they would do adult spray.
You know, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, that as needed is there, and it's tricky because you go to Clark, who is the vendor, and say, you're monitoring, what should we do? And they say, oh, you should spray. So I don't have the answer.
That was my understanding, because I was on the notification list. And so I
Again,
would-
why don't we hand out wipes to all the people on the
Yes.
parade route? For
Yes,
God's sakes. Drew,
yes.
that's gotta be cheaper than $40,000 a year.
Well, the $40,000, I mean, the last
Well, I said
projected was
80, but
it was
whatever.
53. I mean, for 2021, it's projected to be 53, almost
Fine,
54,000.
but I mean, if we handed out, how many people come to the Criterion? How many people come to the other? We could we could hand out, wipes, or we could hand out dryer sheets, or we could tell people don't eat a banana for a week beforehand. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff you can do to reduce the mosquitoes. Or how about let's go back to the rain gardens? I mean, this is so far beyond the pale that we would be getting into this. I can't even believe it.
Again,
Marina, I'm right
crystal
there with
clear.
you. I've tested
Okay.
every kind of bug spray there is out there. And a surefire way in public education, all you have to do is turn on a fan
Okay,
and sit on your porch, put out a fan. Mosquitoes can't, I mean,
yeah,
I've studied everything about mosquitoes.
yeah.
But my point is this. This is the proposal. They're going to come back with, if you want this, this is how much it's going to cost. And we're going to say, oh no, that's way too expensive. Well, we have the ability to say it's too expensive. Take out this and this and this and this to meet our 40,000. That's the way we can get feedback. That's the way we can control this right now. And I will add that you can call our vendor Clark. You can call them and say, I have bees. I have beehives. I have chickens. You can't spray by my house, and they won't spray.
But they do, because I'm in the parade route. I mean, I'm in the Criterion or the parade route. It's there. I mean, it's just,
And
Yeah.
spraying is so well known to not be effective. It really just makes citizens feel like something's being done, but it's
Yes.
not effective. It's just spraying money and poison.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
it's crystal clear, you guys. I know where you're at on spraying. So,
Yeah,
But
okay.
here's my
yeah.
question: is what we say going to make a difference? Is any of
Listen,
what we're saying going to make
yeah.
a difference?
maybe, I don't know. The board will have to decide on that, right? I think it's smart to wind it down. And I think it's going to be a concerted effort, because again, I think if you went on and asked your average, somebody walking down the street, hey, did you know the mosquito abatement district's gone? What's that? I just think that's the general, you served on it, Marietta, I mean, there's,
But
Nobody knows, but everybody expects.
everybody expects that services will be provided.
They don't know where it comes from. They think it comes from the village anyway. That's why they call you and complain.
That's right.
But the culture is the government should take care of me and kill all the mosquitoes because I just got bitten and I don't like that. And
right.
that's the public education piece. But if what we're saying may or may not make a difference right now, then
I
me
think,
as a citizen, what can I do? Can I go to the board meeting and stand up and say,
Yeah.
yeah, of course. And I want to say that having served on the village board, we were always very respectful and listened very closely to the board's and the committees that made recommendations. It was hard for me to remember when we totally disregarded a series of recommendations. That said, we are an advisory committee to the village board, and if community members or even any of you want to show up to the board member to speak your personal opinion, we can. I think we as an SEC make our recommendations, make our list, and then the board acts or does not act on that. But we can this issue does not have to go away. I don't want this to feel like we're not going to continue to discuss this on the board. I think it's clear to Drew what we have as a committee. Definitely the helicopter, the truck spraying even is kind of a not recommended, and the others are more of a let's advance this in the future. I do want to make sure that we've got time to address the rest of tonight's agenda, and I also think that we're going to have either in the next meeting or very soon a whole education discussion about how we on these issues we as the SEC are able to educate the community, and there's a lot of different topics. I mean, Glenn and I had a chicken outside once at the farmers market to educate people. And I think this would be one of those things where we could get out there early this year in the farmers market and start talking to people about this. So.
Would it be, could I suggest, sorry, Glenn, could we request that our comments about this particular agenda item are circulated to all the board members in advance of their discussion of this topic?
Sure, we can have the meeting minutes handed to them
Thank
as part of this. Yeah,
And highlighted
and bold.
in bold.
Yes.
Exactly.
I mean, I would hope it's an option too for Lake Bluff to just say the abatement district has disbanded and Lake Bluff does not need to pick up those services.
I mean,
That's
that
an
is
option.
a choice. That is a choice. I would be surprised if the village board chose to do that. I think they would probably take let's turn down the volume and let's do it in a specified time frame, and that would be, I think, a good way, like you said, to educate the community on alternatives on how to achieve the same. So.
I mean, we've already turned down the volume with the no helicopter. Let's just keep turning down the volume and see if the flags are raised or the citronella torches.
So I'm thinking, where can I, Marietta Hans, citizen and resident of Lake Bluff, go to talk to the board in one of the 15-minute open meeting things? Are there going to be public meetings about this before?
We anticipate the scale of the contract will require board action. So it'll go to a board and there'll be conversation about it.
Okay.
And I don't think there's procedurally, I think if there was to be a letter, I mean, usually there's resolutions, like sometimes advisory bodies would issue some sort of formal resolution, like here's where we stand formally on a certain issue. Or we can do some sort of joint communication that staff could prepare, that Brian and Marina as co-chairs could sign. This is how we feel this way about this particular project or this level of service. If you really wanted to make a very big splashy statement, I think the minutes will speak volumes to where your guys are at on this. I mean, I think that's
Right, and I think, Drew, you've always been good when the issue came up, any issue on the board, of saying, hey, I want to inform you of what the SEC, when it comes time for the bid to be evaluated at the board meeting. But also any citizen, any of us could show up to that board meeting as well, or Marina and I could show up.
I'll be there.
As long as we're informed.
Definitely.
And that's not part of the 15 minutes. That's part of the discussion of the topic. I do want to mention, because we've run out of time, a little bit of time, I have to leave at 8. I have to take my daughter to a dance lesson. Will we lose quorum, or can we continue to discuss the master plan without any just discussion?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that was actually what I was going to chime in about. So you would have a quorum, just barely, so you could continue to discuss business legally. Again, you're close to missing half your group, so you may wish to reschedule that item for a different night. You can go to your March regular meeting, or there's some dates here we can circulate to call a special meeting and pick this back up.
I am concerned, not personally, although I'd love to have the discussion, I'm concerned that we're missing some members for the remainder of the strategic discussion. So Marina, what do you think?
I mean, I agree that it would be helpful to have the other board members. Not that I don't think that the women could just take it and run with it.
I can excuse myself. Brian can give me a ride. I can go worry about Dave.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think we should postpone it.
I agree. I agree.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody, for your comments on the mosquito. I mean, I expected that, so I'm glad you had those comments and spent time on it. Thank you. And Marietta, my apologies that you served as well. I had forgotten about the passing of the torch in the Hans household. I'd forgotten about that, so forgive me.
No, that's okay.
Thank you so much for the history.
Does anybody see this little sign in the back of my office here? Do not spray here. Okay, I used to put that in the windshield of my minivan, put it down at the very end of our driveway so the trucks would not come up the driveway. And when I heard the trucks, I would go out there and the kid with the sprayer, no protection, no mask, just a t-shirt with a mosquito on it. And he'd say, "You got to move your car." And I'd say, "I'm not moving it anywhere. And you, if you want to have children, better put some kind of mask on your face and cover your eyes." I mean, please, I can't say anymore because I would not stop talking. I'm so against it. Absolutely so against it. So I'll be at that board meeting with my friends. Yes.
Okay, do you guys want to continue miscellaneous items, or should we call to adjourn?
Do we have miscellaneous?
I'll just mention, Member Hans circulated with Drew and I another a good idea about education. I know Brian referenced that in your next meeting agenda. We'll try to put together a talk about how the committee approaches and prioritizes and manages its educational part of its mission. So certainly, again, thanks to Member Hans for sharing that and putting some thought into that. And I think that'll be a good discussion.
Yep.
Okay.
Motion to
Given
adjourn.
that, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right. Do we roll call or all in favor? I can't remember with these virtual.
We do a voice vote.
Oh, voice vote?
Okay, voice vote, please. All in favor?
Aye.
Bye.
Aye.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you both.
Bye.
Good night.